This video is going to be how I do my hair using the barrel curling technique. So if you would like to see how it's done, please keep on watching. I start off with basically a mohawk part all the way down the middle from front to back. These are the pins that I will be using to hold my curls in place. You can get these at Sally's. I believe you can get a box of 100 for them for a pretty good price. So to start out, I'm taking a small section out of the mohawk parting that I made, and I'm going to separate the rest of my hair, and this is basically going to be pulled forward. The very front curl that I do is going to be the only one that I roll in a different direction. I'm going to roll it towards the front, and the reason for this is because when you do roll it backwards, with this one being in the front, it can make it look like your hair is very slicked back and upright. So this one, in order to keep it on base, it's a little confusing because I'm actually going to over direct it backwards, but then roll it forward. And I use a technique that I was taught in cosmetology school where you start in the mid shaft of the hair and start rolling forward, and you do a little clicking movement with the curling iron to loosen it and to let the last little piece kind of slip in there. And what that does is it helps keep all of your hair into the curling iron, especially if you have someone who has a lot of layers. This way it'll keep everything in there and not a lot of pieces falling out. And then I basically just roll it all the way down, and since I over directed, it's going to sit directly on the base where it needs to be. Next, I'm going to carefully hold on to that curl and open and close my curling iron to loosen it up and pull the iron all the way out. And this way it's going to keep the curl sitting where I need it on my head. Sometimes the little pieces fall out. You'll see it on the one side it comes out, but it's real easy to kind of just push it back in there. And I take those clips from the beginning and I put one on each side if I need to. Sometimes I only need just one, but obviously this one wanted to kind of get a little bit more loose. So I'm putting one on both sides so that it stays in place for the rest of the time. So here is what it should look like. Obviously, when you're doing this on someone else, it's a little bit easier to make it a lot more neat compared to what I have it. It does take time and practice to do this on your own hair, so just be very patient. And what I do is I take another section, the exact same size, right behind the first one I did. And this is where you will start curling the opposite direction. This way you are going to curl towards the back. And if you want it to sit directly on the base, I didn't do it with this one, but you would want to over direct your hair forward and then roll it back. I do the same exact thing where I'm clicking the iron and pulling the rest of those little pieces all the way through, so that way all of the hair stays in the iron. At this point, I have pretty much all of the hairs in here, so I'm just going to roll it all the way down and hold it just for a little bit until I feel the time is right. And then I'm going to go in and do the very same thing and very carefully hold on to the hair that's in the iron. I'm going to unravel a little bit, and you can see that I'm opening and closing it to kind of loosen it and be able to pull it out. I'm going to make sure that the hair is sitting exactly where I need it and grab my clips and fasten that to my head. Moving on to the very next section, again, I'm going to take the exact same size or close to from what I am able to actually see while doing this, and I'm going to do the very same process. Every single curl at this point will be held and curled in the exact same direction. The only different one is going to be the very front. As you can see, it's a little sloppy because I can't really see back there, but I do this all the way down the back of my head. Moving to the sides, I'm going to split that entire section in half, starting at the back of my ear all the way up to the next parting. I'm going to pin back this back section to keep this out of my way, and we're pretty much going to do the same thing, except for the curls are going to sit on my head, kind of going with the shape of my head. Instead of going back into a mohawk, I'm going to split them horizontally, and I'm going to hold them upright and roll them down. So when I'm on the sides, I'm going to do the exact same technique. It is hard to get everything in the video at this angle, but I'm trying to over direct upward so that way they sit as much on the base as possible. But with the same technique, I am just rolling a little bit and then pulling those last little hairs through and then rolling again. I'm doing the exact same thing that I did on the top. I'm going to eventually get it to where all the hairs are in there and roll it all the way down. Hold it for a little bit, and then I will be pinning it exactly the way that I did the top. The only difference of the way that the curls are on the side is basically they're not going to be sitting in a row like the mohawk one down the middle. They are just going to be facing a different direction, but every single thing is done the exact same way. None of them are curled in opposite directions. You're still going in the same direction as you did all of the other ones except for that very front curl. So here you see me pulling the iron out, and you'll see all those curls fall out a little bit, but you just put your finger there and kind of tuck it all back in and reshape them where you need to, and then you go ahead and put in your pins. In the front section, I am usually able to get in 3. The very bottom one is going to be a very small one, so you actually won't have to hold the iron there for a long period of time either. But I do the same thing. I just take another section about the same size or close to the same size as that first one, and I'm going to roll it down exactly the same way and pin it exactly the same way, and I will do the very same thing with that last piece on the bottom. The section that is clipped back right now is going to be done exactly the same way as I did these front 3 on the side here, and it gets a little tough because it's hard to see and hard to figure out where to hold everything, but just be patient. This is what they should all look like when they are rolled, except for eventually they should be a lot nicer looking than mine. Then I just take a hairspray and put a little bit of spray in there, and I will leave this sit for about an hour at the least. Mine sat in for about an hour and a half this time. So when you get to the point of taking them out, the easiest way to do this is to start from the bottom. You don't need to do it in sections like the way that you rolled them in. My best advice for this is to start on one side on the very bottom and move all the way across to the other side, and then move up to the next row and just keep going like that. And this way you won't lose any of your pins or forget to unroll one or have a hard time with your hair getting tangled with each other. Another thing I do as I'm taking these out is, as you see, there will be one big curl. I will take that one and split it into 2 or 3 smaller curls, because some of the sections on mine are really big, and this way I can kind of keep you from being able to see where I had all of my partings. And I just like to have a lot more curls instead of a bunch of like huge ones. So for me, you can see me shaking it out and I'm separating it a little bit, and it also is because of the way that I'm going to end up styling this. You can do whatever you want with them. Some people brush them out at the end and then it just looks really wavy. I like to keep mine in as much of the curl shape as possible. As I get to the top, this is where you will be able to see that if we would have rolled that very front one backward, that it would look a little bit silly, unless that is a certain style you were going for. But if you don't want it to look how it looks right there, how it's just like upright and going backwards, and see how this one kind of does the opposite, but it gives you a little bit more freedom to kind of move it around to where you would want it. This is my final look. I just pinned some halfway out of my face, and I'm adding a hairspray to keep it in place for me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe.